Welcome to S&P's Why Not Us, the podcast that knows the correct answer to how long it's been since the Knicks have been in the finals is 32 years and not 26 because lockout years do not count. I'm your host, Scott Greenhut, and on the other side of the mic, someone who I watched the Charles Smith game with, the Reggie Miller game with, and countless other gems, my good friend Peter Olczyk.
Thank you for that. Hi, everybody. I do hear the fans. We have some new ones I've heard from actually over the last couple of weeks. Wisconsin, PA, Florida, California. Thank you so much. I wanted to start today, actually. We're about a week out from Dunkin's annual Iced Coffee Day, which is for a children's charity they do every year. We were talking a little bit about iced coffee a couple of weeks ago. I asked you an innocent question. How many iced coffees do you have in a day? And I think I heard something about there's coffee zero. And this was a new term for me. I was wondering maybe if you could shed a little bit of light on coffee zero.
I would be happy to, and I'm glad you've caught up because this term is used by most of my colleagues at work, my entire family, and soon by virtue of this podcast, exponentially more people. So what does it mean? It means that every day of the year, winter, spring, summer, fall, within 3 minutes of waking up, I'm pouring some pre-made iced coffee into a 24-ounce glass and finishing it pretty quickly. It's automatic, it's ritual, and it doesn't count. When I'm asked how many coffees I've had that day, you just don't use that number. Now, before you use this concept in real life, there are a couple of rules of the road I'd like to lay out.
Sure.
You can't use this term unless you drink a lot of iced coffee. You haven't earned it. It doesn't play. My wife has 1 iced coffee a day. She can't say she has 0 iced coffees a day. It's nonsensical. Secondly, for proper effect, you really need to say it like it's a fact. So if you're having a late night at work, maybe you say, man, it's been a long day. I've had 6 coffees. And then if asked the timing of said coffees, you can quickly start with coffee 0 at 6:30 a.m. and coffee 1 at 8 a.m. and so on. Don't say it like it's funny. Say it matter-of-factly.
Okay, so I think my first takeaway there was since I am a 2 iced coffee a day guy, that doesn't count, so I won't use the terminology. I do owe you a thank you, though. You've absolutely helped me shake my Snapple habit, a Snapple iced tea, which was out there for many years. I also did enjoy the real facts inside the pop-up bottle cap. Maybe these days I would actually probably check those facts a little bit more closely. But for many years, it really did seem like the best stuff on earth for me. But thank you so much for getting me to see the light with iced coffee. And I am now a 2 iced coffee a day person.
Fantastic.
Religiously.
And guess what? One other thing.
Yeah.
To all the aficionados, the coffee connoisseurs out there who say that a properly drawn cup of espresso is the only way to go, or appreciate the art in the cortado that the barista made. You know what? Just leave it alone, okay? Iced coffee tastes great. It's refreshing. It doesn't leave you thirsty. Let's give it up for iced coffee.
All right. Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
Hail iced coffee. Let's get to the sports stuff. In today's episode, we'll hand out some MLB team grades versus expectations as we hit the 30% mark of the baseball season, talk a little tennis with the French Open around the corner, but how can we not tip off with the NBA's conference finals? So here we are. Conference finals out west, we're set with what we had expected, I think what we hoped for, I think what a lot of NBA fans had hoped for, OKC and the Spurs. And we got a Game 7 that we'll get to tonight in the East. So let's start out west. How you feeling about OKC versus San Antonio?
8-0.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Sweeping Phoenix and Lakers. Margin of victory nearly 17 points on average. Defending champs have home courts, have home court advantage. SGA playing like the best player in basketball. I like OKC over Wemby and the Spurs.
So, in how many games? Do you feel like it's a long series?
I feel like it's a 6er.
All right. So I am certainly rooting for a long series. I would give the edge to OKC Of course, so excited about the SGA versus Wemby matchup. I will say that I don't buy into kind of the experience versus happy to be here cliche. San Antonio is legitimately really good, and I don't think that they feel along those lines in any stretch.
No,
So
when Wemby's interviewed, he is a man on a mission. Clearly, he's not happy with just being there.
yeah, and he's so thoughtful whenever he speaks. Does the regular season matchup count? 4-1 Spurs. I don't buy too much into that, but certainly it would give San Antonio some confidence. Really looking forward to that entire series. And we have a game 7 tonight. Detroit's at home versus Cleveland. I will say, and I'll let you jump in, but I'm pretty excited about hearing Detroit basketball. The PA is just amazing, John Mason, and how the crowd gets into it. So the game itself, but yeah, it's going to be electric tonight.
I agree, and I've flip-flopped on this series, admittedly, many times, and so I couldn't tell you. I really don't have a good feel. In my heart of hearts, I think Detroit will take it at home, and James Harden won't do enough for Cleveland. He'll probably do too much in a bad way. But we'll see. It's been a great series, very entertaining.
Yeah, I will say I think we spoke a little bit about James Harden last time, and I think it was game 4, watching him at his truly best. 3 possessions in a row,
Yes.
2 drives, I think a step back 3. This was vintage James Harden in control. He had a great moment there. He doesn't have anything to prove, but it certainly will be interesting to see how things shake out tonight in Detroit. Now, of course, the winner is going to face our New York Knicks. And let me just get something out there. I think last time we mentioned the 73 title was the last time that the Knicks won an NBA title.
That's correct.
But let's just be clear. For us, that title does not count.
No.
Our sports fandom really started, I would say, and I did look at some of the references across the sports to confirm this, 1974, 1975 are the players across my teams that I started to experience. So just for everyone's understanding, 1973 is not our title. We don't have one.
Couldn't agree more. We were early sports fans, as you just mentioned, but not that early. I don't recall it either.
All right. So do you have a strong preference on Detroit versus Cleveland, or where's your head at as we're a couple of days out now from game 1?
Yeah, I know a popular narrative out there is that we should want to play Detroit. They're not as deep as Cleveland. I'd go the other way. I want my home advantage if I can get it. The Garden has just been crazy. The Knicks have played great both ways,
Yeah.
home and the road, but the Garden has been absolutely special, and they're playing with just so much confidence. Just go down the line. I gave Bridges a little bit of grief earlier on. The guy has been fantastic. Brunson, epic. Cat, epic. And then obviously the health of OG is critical because, for my money, he was having the best playoffs of any player out there.
100%. And it's good to see that he's going to be probably at full strength and good minutes for game 1. I will just say something on Detroit. I think I mentioned early on when we started up that we had a Pistons problem this year. 4 straight. They weren't particularly competitive. Of course, this Knicks team is not that Knicks team that lost those 4 straight. But there's other things going on. You have the fact that we knocked out Detroit last year in a very competitive series. You could tell that Detroit was coming on fast. And of course, the crowd, every time Jalen Brunson touched the basketball, really gets into sort of the flopping, and it becomes just more of that energy that I was talking about before. So it would be interesting to see if that is the matchup, how we navigate all of those things, because Detroit would be fired up to have a rematch against the New York Knickerbockers.
And just bring back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
The history runs deep with those guys. Okay, let's turn from the hardwood to the diamond. And have a chat about the time of game. So baseball made a number of changes a couple of years back.
Yep.
Games got super short, not, relatively speaking, much shorter. How's it looking right around now?
Yeah, so Tom Verducci, who is just the best at his craft, whether he's writing about baseball, talking about baseball, did a little something a couple of weeks ago through the first month of the season that 9 inning games were taking 6 minutes longer. So that's 2 hours and 43 minutes than last year. So we're on pace for the longest average game time in 4 seasons under the pitch timer. And immediately, I think it's fair to ask, oh, was this an ABS challenge thing? And we've talked about how fantastic the ABS has been. Interestingly, so far, ABS has only added about 63 seconds per game. That's an average of 4.1 challenges per game. So 15 seconds per challenge, and we've seen it work. It works extremely well. It's very efficient. So there's more to it than that. Do you want to touch on a couple of the other things going on there?
Yeah, I do. The part that I think is fixable but contributing here a lot is the art of the timeout from the hitter.
Yeah.
They have, in the beginning, seemingly were afraid of doing anything, and so they stayed in the box, and now they are like stepping out just in time and slowing things down, and they get one timeout per at bat, and
Yeah.
the whole thing resets. I'm sure you're going to get to this, but I'll throw it out there as well. What we're seeing in the minor leagues, some adjustments to this, and I think almost all of those sound like a good idea to me, and I would love to see them brought up.
Yeah, so on the hitter's side, a couple of the numbers. This is pretty stark. 7.7 timeouts per game, both teams in 2023. Fast forward to this year, we're at 16.9. So that's just about double in 3 years. So that's something to keep an eye on. And on the other side, on the pitcher side of things, this whole game within the game, pitchers are very smartly, and you can see it if you watch, bleeding the pitch timer more and more. That is a skill, to being able to wait, knowing when you're getting down to a few seconds, making the hitter more fidgety than he normally would be, maybe on a particular account. But freezing and disrupting of hitters has certainly been a part of what's going on here. And just the last piece, which is something to watch in terms of extra time of game, are pitches being called from the dugout. So far, all we know that we truly know is the Marlins and the Rockies. There's actually some time that Tom Verducci put to it. One more second to an average time per pitch in Marlins games. 1.5 seconds more per pitch in Rockies games. So actually in Rockies games, the average game for Rockies games is 3 minutes and 41 seconds longer than it had been. That is not nothing. And of course, in terms of the strategy side of all of that, even if other teams aren't truly publicizing this, you know that with all the advanced analytics going on with GMs and their entire ops team, that they might be subtly having an impact with their systems in the dugout, and more to come.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I don't like it. Look, analytics are a huge part of the game and all this stuff, but let the guys play baseball. Just let them play. Also, this whole, but PitchCom's not working. Is there anything more annoying than just watching these guys walk around with their hat up? And it just looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's get a move on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Catchers, part of the whole catcher skill set is being able to have a feel for the game. We don't really want to take that away.
All right. So let's go from time of game to a little bit of team grades.
Yeah.
And we're going to do these versus expectations entering the season. I think we're each going to pick a team above expectation, team below. Why don't you get us started with one of the overachievers?
Yeah, so this is a solid A for the Tampa Bay Rays. Heading into, this is through Saturday's games, 29-15 through Saturday. They had the best record in baseball. They are back at their home sweet dome, aka the Trop. This is all very Rays. Second in ERA, strong starting pitching trio, guys like Drew Rasmussen, who's been a good pitcher, but by no means a star. Shane McClanahan, who's had tons of arm issues and has been healthy and really strong this year. And Nick Martinez, who's been a hybrid reliever starter, who has just quietly had a very strong season. Offense, a little bit better than average, definitely a big three. Yandy Diaz, Junior Caminero, who has some of the highest exit velocities in the game. And truly a breakout slug year from Jonathan Aranda, who's been a very good player, but the power is new this year. And they're actually also doing an old school sort of speedy table setter, leadoff Chandler Simpson, when in these days we're actually seeing lots of slug in the one spot. So A for Tampa.
I too had Tampa. I have nothing to add.
We love you, Rays. Okay. All right, let's get to the bad. I got a D+ for the Toronto Blue Jays. (20-25), so the record is not too bad, but again, this is reverse expectations. The plus really is because this is a team that has been decimated by the injured list. 5 starting pitchers, including the standout from September and October last year, Trey Yesavich. He really didn't debut until the end of April. Three of their sort of normal hitters on offense, Alejandro Kirk, Springer, Addison Barger, who had a huge playoffs last year. And there's also waiting on the slug of Vladdy Guerrero Jr., which I'm sure will come. So you put all that together, and it does speak to that under 500 record. On the good side of things, import Kazuma Akamoto has been amazing, much better than was advertised going in. Another one of the Japan sensations this year from Munetaka Muratami from Chicago White Sox, who's leading the league in home runs. So on the whole Blue Jays side of things, one thing that's working in their favor is that the American League is particularly weak, so you are not going to have to be too many games over 500. We'll talk a little bit more about this with the Mets. So I think the arrows can still be pointing up to Toronto, who is just millimeters away from winning a World Series last year.
Okay. I have a different underachiever.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, I think. Houston Astros. If you know anything about this franchise over the last decade, seeing them so below 500 is just startling. This team hasn't finished below 87 wins since 20, and currently right now, like projections for the rest of the year, even despite their low start, is for them to finish below 500 from here on out.
Yeah.
So things aren't really getting better. Offense is doing fine, Alvarez and so on, but it's the pitching. Some of these numbers are actually startling. 6 ERA, I think, as a team.
Yeah, they've really actually had to backfill. Hunter Brown, who easily could have been in Cy Young conversation heading into this year and had a nice start. He's out with the shoulder. Hopefully he's back, but he's not the only one. So I don't know, I think off the top of my head, maybe they've been through 8 or so starters at least so far. So, yeah.
That's right. And the thing also about these guys is Tuve, Walker getting older. So they've been good for so long, but right now the future looks a little more challenging.
Yeah, it's an aging core for sure. All right. That brings us to what we can't ignore, which is truly the big baseball bobblehead in the room. Do you see the big baseball bobblehead in the room?
Look at that, Mr. Met.
Mr. Met is
Our
here.
best player has made an appearance.
Please be careful with that. That's a prized possession. So let's talk a little Metsies. Why don't you give us your sort of Metsies grade to date?
Sure. You and I just watched their best comeback of the year.
Yeah.
Against their crosstown rivals, New York Yankees. That was inspiring. And therefore, my grade for this team is an F. and it's a solid F, not even teetering on a D. They are absolutely abysmal. The payroll on this team, we're going to talk about the injuries. We're going to talk about the injuries to star players. I'm really uninterested. The fact that their hitting is so historically awful. They're dead last in OPS in baseball, dead last with that payroll. It's absolutely mind boggling. If you're looking for rays of light, the bullpen's been okay. McLean's been pretty good from the pitching side. So pitching, fine. That's not the issue, but hitting, just historically terrible. Interested in your read, since sometimes you can look on the brighter side of things. So help me out here.
So my grade is a D minus, and so I did go to the D range because of the really strong effort across the pitching staff with an offense that has been extremely hard to watch pretty much on a nightly basis since the start of the season. And that's pretty up and down. That's pretty up and down the lineup. Yes, injuries didn't help, but the ineffectiveness of players that should be closer to the back of their baseball card has certainly been an issue here. So let's look a little bit going forward with where we're at. Through yesterday, Fangraphs playoff percentage, 23%. I think we were probably in the low 80s before the season started, so that's a pretty clear indication of where we're at. Now, going forward, as I mentioned, the NL is absolutely stronger now and is likely going to stay stronger than the American League. So I'd say something like 87 wins is probably going to be the wild card threshold. If you recall last year, they were really only 3 games over 500 right at the end on that last day, and it didn't quite work out. So basically, that means playing this is through yesterday, 68 and 49 rest of the season. That's a 581 clip. Is that doable? Yeah, that is doable. But they're going to need to show ownership and their general manager, David Stearns, that they are worthy of putting a little bit more into this team as we creep towards the trade deadline. So we really do need to see a team that somehow finds its way over 500. I'll also say that I love, of course, the infusion of the young talent, big jolt, or a jolt, if you will, from A.J. Ewing. And we very well might see, especially with the injury to Clay Holmes last night, which was horrific, we may see Zach Thornton, the lefty, or Jack Wenninger, the righty. These are 2 extremely talented pitchers. And the minor system, as we've talked a little bit about, has really been, the arrows have been pointing up there. So those are some shining lights from me in terms of going forward.
You know what? We'll take it. We'll take some shining lights. And I agree. Ewing's been ridiculous, but small sample set. But we love the enthusiasm.
All right, so let's get into a little bit of the tennis. This coming Sunday is the kickoff to Roland Garros, the French Open. A couple of things. On the men's side, Jannik Sinner does feel like this is his tournament versus the field to lose since Alcaraz is out with the wrist. Since 2016, I took a look, only 3 men's winners during that time. Rafael Nadal, 2017 through 2020 and 22. Djokovic 3 times, most recently 23. And then, of course, Alcaraz the last couple of years. And then just, if we go back, I remember watching a little bit. I don't know if you did, but the 2025 final with Alcaraz and Sinner, 5-set thriller, 2 tiebreakers for the last 2 sets. The 3 match points that Alcaraz had to save down 5-3 in the 4th set. And what about the total points? You know what the total points was in that match for both players?
I don't, but I get the feeling it's going to be pretty close.
It's pretty close. Jannik Sinner had 193. Carlos Alcaraz had 192.
Yeah, it's so good.
What a match.
It reminds me of Federer's commencement speech that he gave at some university and he gave his point percentage over his career. Yeah. And it was startlingly close to 50. I mean, it was above 50, obviously, but whatever, I can't call it top of my head, but it was startlingly close. And it just shows you tennis is a ruthless scoring system, and it's mentally draining.
Yeah.
So that's
Let me
all part of the fun.
Absolutely. Let me touch on the women for a second. So, Iga Swiatek, been the queen of clay for the last few years. 2020 winner, won it 2022 through 24. Coco last year got the title. Now, interestingly, last year Coco lost the Italian Open final and then went on to win the French. This year, Coco lost the Italian Open final as we approach the French. So that's something that's out there. And of course, I'm interested in seeing, I don't know if you've read a little bit about this or watched, but she has really worked hard on her service motion with a biomechanics coach. This is Gavin McMillan, I believe is his name. And this is the guy who worked with Sabalenka to completely help her and her yips and to really just restructure her own serve. So this has been work in progress. From what I've seen recently, I think the arrows have been pointing up. She feels pretty good heading into the tournament, but that's certainly something to watch as we kick off on the women's side.
That's great. Should we both do our quick power rankings of the Grand Slam? Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
Wimbledon, U.S. Open, French, Australian.
I'm not going to argue with that, although I will say I have a very soft spot for the French Open, so I could easily make the case that it could be 2 for me because the long points, the epic matches, being somebody who was really always more of a baseliner back in the day, I do love some of what the French Open is all about. However, the U.S. Open has gotten more rally-driven recently. The courts are a bit slower. And even Wimbledon, they worked on the grass, so you can actually have some rallying on Wimbledon. But I'll make that point, but I'm not going to argue the order.
Yeah, I won't argue it either. All right. So it's time for some lightning.
Yeah, let's do a little lightning.
We're going to do a little lightning. So the first lightning is the NFL schedule release was this week. It was hard to miss if you turned on your television set, but thoughts on
Yeah. So this is just another example coming out of the draft recently where the NFL just finds a way to always be relevant. They've really set the standard on this across the major sports. The schedule release is supposed to be on a Thursday. It was on a Thursday. But on Monday, of course, there's a leak on Sunday Night Football where your New York Giants were announced to be playing Dallas, which I think is maybe 7 of the last 8 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then on Tuesday, another leak, Monday Night Football, Kansas City versus Denver. Enough said on that. And then you finally get to Thursday, which I heard a little blurb on, which I thought was interesting. They call it the league's springtime social media Super Bowl.
That's right.
So all the team videos, everybody tries to stay on brand, and this is just such a good way to fire up your fan base. So again, the NFL setting the standard.
I do know people voted on who had the best kind of social media release, and yeah, you're right. The king of the American sports landscape for sure. The NFL, and God, I would love to check the Giants' record against Cowboys in these last several years. It would be what I would call not good. So finally, maybe we change that because Dallas ain't so great and we're getting better. Okay,
well, we're gonna have
another time.
We're gonna have a lot of time to talk about that. Let's talk a little. Let me cue you up on a little bit of hockey. Let me just say, kudos to Buffalo for breaking the 14-year playoff drought. The no longer tied in the 4 major sports with, of course, my team, the New York Jets, who are 15 and counting. So I am having a soft spot and rooting for Buffalo. But what do you got on the hockey?
Let's start with Buffalo. Season on the line, heading into Montreal on a Saturday night. If you looked in the stand, every single person got their Habs jerseys on. They couldn't be more riveted. And oh my God, they had to pull their goalie. Things are going terribly. Season's about to end, and they scored 7 straight goals. That's absolutely nuts. And it sets up what's going to be an epic Game 7. Cannot miss TV. On the West, you have a couple of the heavyweights from the recent years. You have the Colorado Avalanche, or as I like to refer to them, Team Canada starting lineup against the Vegas Golden Knights, who are a little less storied but have been extremely successful over the last several years. So congrats to them. I like Colorado not only in that series, but to win the whole thing. That's been my stance from the beginning. That's not changing, but who knows? Hockey's it's a long postseason. To think that they're really only halfway done is mind blowing, but that's where we're at.
All right, let's get into one more. This has been a hot topic in the NBA. There's a proposed new anti-tanking NBA draft rules. The commissioner spoke about it recently. So the overall gist that's been thrown around is a 3-2-1 proposal. This would be through 2029 or the current CBA. So the three ping pong balls, if you will, would be the fourth worst team to the 10th worst team. Mm-hmm. The worst three would lose a ping pong ball, so they would be the 2. And then the 1 would be those teams that are just on the play-in for the playoffs or just out. Maybe not quite official yet. I think the owners' meeting is in a few weeks, and we'll actually see the details. But certainly when the commissioner spoke the other day, he talked about flat odds, no particular incentive to be bad. And I think this was really driven how all of a sudden this year, based upon the talent coming up into the draft, 8 to 10 teams all of a sudden in tank mode with a few sort of pivoting almost around the All-Star break.
Yeah, I like some of the moves that the NBA is making. I'm going to add one thing the NHL does, which is, I think, an excellent rule, which is you can only have the first pick of the first round, a maximum of 2 times in 5 years.
Saw that, yeah.
You can't just be draft hunting and just going after the ping pong balls, or in the days before ping pong balls, just locking in number 1. So that's one thing. But here's the bigger thing. I think hockey and basketball have this all backwards. If we think about soccer, okay, I could be here all day listing things that I don't like about soccer. We could fill up endless whiteboards. I could just keep going down and down. And I'd make a lot of enemies out there because not everyone, but it's probably the world's most popular game.
Hey, we're going to be talking a little World Cup in a month or so. So hold on.
All that. But let me tell you one thing these guys do correct. That's relegation. This is fantastic. Talk about getting punished for tanking and or just stinking. You imagine you're the worst team in the NBA. Great, you're going to the G League. This will motivate some players to all of a sudden not be so injured and not need that rest and give the fans what they've paid for. And I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. And not only that, you could even go further and start talking about the best picks go to the ones that were closest to making the playoffs. So really reward the effort. We're not communists here. Let's go. Let's toughen these rules up. Let's get rid of the tanking and let's just be better than this.
Before we leave this one, the thing that's fascinating to me, which was just almost a little bit of an aside that I saw the other day, was that it's possible that there could be some authority from the NBA to change the draft order to move teams further back in the lottery based upon just what they're watching, along with losing a pick. Now, this would be based on the league's quote unquote opinion, which is just absolutely ripe to be gamed and to have all sorts of unintended consequences.
Yes, if we think David Stern got into trouble for making the Knicks lottery ball cold so that they could get Patrick Ewing, forget all that when it's just unilateral discretion to move things around. That would just be
so more to come on all of this as we head into the summer. So, with that, let's shift to a little bit of PS. And this week, we're actually going to do a slight curveball. We're actually going to stay on the field or court or the ice. And you want to mention the topic with fandom in our families for this week?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This was my idea. I thought we each have kids of a similar age
Yeah.
and talk about their journey with respect to the sports. Very different, I'd say, between the two of us. Let's see, let me make this as fast as possible, but also make it resonate. I have an older girl. So do you. I gave it a puncher's chance with Nicole. She was sweet. She would come to all the games. She would wear the uniforms that I gave her. She would root for the home team. She'd eat the ice cream, and then she'd go home and forget that it ever happened.
I distinctly remember the four of us going to one of these games and my daughter having all sorts of Mets bracelets and paraphernalia, etc.
But can my daughter name a Met right now? No, she cannot. But then it all was riding on the boy. He was the only one remaining, and I thought this would be a lock. So I did my best. I got season tickets to the Giants. I took them to Mets games, Knicks, all of my teams. And you know what I got? I got a lot of questions about the rules. That's what,
Okay.
and he would be like, "Why?" And I'd give an answer that I thought was satisfactory, and he'd be like, "But what about this? Like, why? I don't understand that rule. It makes no sense because of X, Y, Z." And over time, I would be pulling out my hair because my team would be losing. He was just very analytical, but not a big fan. And over time, he kind of dropped out. His famous quote to me was, "They don't care about you, so why should you care about them?"
That is pretty analytic.
It's like it's so rational, but what about this is supposed to be rational? It's nothing. It's a tough argument to beat. We can fast forward to the punchline here, which is in 10th grade, a switch was flipped rather, and Henry, all of a sudden, something deep inside turned on, and he has become an enormous Rangers fan. We watch every game together when he is home. He can't even handle it when they're in the playoffs, overtime playoff games. He's worse than me. He's all in, and I'm really appreciative for that.
All right, I get it. Let me start with Andrew with a couple of things, and then I'll kind of end with Zoe. So, Andrew, big sports kid, talented baseball player. So fun being a baseball dad, doing some coaching before I kind of handed him off. Great golfer, all of these things. Andrew, big Mets Jets guy. When we're at home, the times that we're home, certainly we both have a feel in terms of if things are going in the wrong direction to maybe switch up separate rooms, maybe close a door. Sports superstitions for us is definitely part of our sports fandom, I would say. Going to games, going to Mets games together is great because there we really can just get into the details of what's going on, the game within the game, as somebody who's played it and appreciates it as much as I do. And I will say that Andrew did come around because I think you know this one. And this is a little bit about a parenting moment here. But Andrew in pre-K, he actually went to school in a classroom with a very big Yankees fan whose name I will leave out. And during that spring coming out of it, he kind of went to the other side and had a
I was
Yankees
just
brief
thinking
phase.
that it was like when Darth Vader was there, tempting Luke with all those goodies.
So, as a parent there, that's a pretty tough moment for me, if I'm being candid. I will say that I did get him a Robinson Cano jersey, who was a Yankee, and then ironically actually came over to the Mets in later years, number 24. I let all that play out. To the best of my recollection, it maybe lasted through that baseball season. I'd say he's about 5 years old at that point, and then he kind of came back on his own. And I bit my tongue and just supported his playing and watching, and things went that way. So there's a parenting moment.
That you're a better father than I am. I'm not sure if I could have handled that with such grace and accuracy.
It's all a little gray, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went down.
I'm pretty sure too, because I remember thinking like, no, come on.
So let's get to my daughter. We talked about going to games together. I distinctly remember the four of us when the kids were young, just having all sorts of fun, just being at the ballpark with the ice cream and with the with the paraphernalia, the artwork, the whole thing. Let me jump to something else. We had a very vivid road trip where Zoe and I, when she was, I'd say about 7, I had to double check the dates recently. June 12th, Camden Yards. So I had never actually been to Camden. So excited to go. Left on a Saturday morning, had fun during the day. It was a night game. At this point, Zoe's rocking her number 7 Jose Reyes jersey, full on fandom. Jose Reyes leads off the game. We're sitting, I think, on the third base side with other Mets fans in our crew. And what happens? Leadoff home run. That is just the greatest kind of father-daughter moment at that time. And these days, Zoe appreciates the Mets for my fandom, but like Nicole, is not locked in. But that's something that we remember very well and just makes me smile.
Gotcha. I thought we were going to be discussing running the bases, but you hit me with a different one, which is great stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember waiting online, lining up maybe 7th, 8th inning for about 45 minutes on a Sunday to running the bases, which is also fantastic. Okay, that's actually it for today. Thank you for listening. Until the next time, I'm Peter Olchik.
And I'm Scott Greenhut. Make sure to follow S&P's Why Not Us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player so you never miss an episode. And until then, we're going to put this episode
in the books.